You probably, as I had heard rumors that there was more tax reform coming. Is it even remotely possible to see this kind of cut before the midterms?
Highly unlikely for a couple of different reasons. Number one is that Congress is out of session between now and November 6th when the midterm elections are happening. Lawmakers don't usually come back so close to an election, especially when the majority party, the Republicans, are facing a lot of competitive races and many of them stand to lose seats. So they're going to want to stay on the campaign trail. The second thing is the House already passed a package of follow-up tax cuts, and it didn't go anywhere in the Senate. Republicans don't have the votes to get that through. But beyond that, I spoke to a number of Republican sources about this. And these are people who are well plugged in with party leaders on Capitol Hill and policymakers, and none of them really seem to know what the president was talking about here.
Yeah, that's really interesting, isn't it? Especially given that within his presidency, the deficit has reached, almost $800 billion, a 6-year high.
That's another problem for the Republicans as they're considering another round of tax cuts. There is some clamor in the House among conservatives to deal with capital gains taxes, to maybe index that to inflation, to give companies a boost there. But the exploding deficit on President Trump's watch makes this much more complicated and limits the space they have to maneuver on this. That's a result of the tax law that we saw pass in December of 2017, as well as spending increases on the military and domestic issues.
So does this, though, strike you as perhaps one of those strokes of genius on the president's part, that even it doesn't really need to be true to affect voters in the upcoming midterms? All they'll think is this is the president who, if he has control of the House, gives us tax breaks?
Maybe. It seems like that's what was on the president's mind when he said that. Who doesn't like the idea of a middle-class tax cut right before an election? But there is no bill on this. It's not really clear what contours, what substance he was talking about. And all indications are that he just kind of made it up on the fly. He was asked a question about what time frame do you see. He paused for a minute, thought for a minute, and then said, maybe this. But again, nobody else seemed to be clued in on this. So this is a uniquely Trumpian moment.
Yeah, what you have to really remember is what drove him to say that, right? I mean, voter support for that first tax package must have been so bad that he felt the need to say something.
The politics of the tax law of December 2017 have been a bust, and we see this on a number of different levels. An internal Republican National Committee poll warned Republican candidates on the ballot in 2018 that by a 2-to-1 margin, ordinary Americans believe the tax law benefits corporations and the wealthy over the middle class. There was one major Republican super PAC that's aligned with Speaker Paul Ryan called the Congressional Leadership Fund that started off this year with its executive director saying the only thing that matters for Republican prospects of keeping control of the House is selling this tax law, making sure middle-income Americans know that they've received a tax cut. And that group has run less than a fifth of its ads even mentioning the tax law. So Republicans recognize that this has not worked out politically the way they hoped it would.